Hello students, in this video we will learn about Victorian Age, which is also known as an era of conflicts and complexities. In this video we will learn about literary genres, literary periods, Victorian period in particular, and why it is unique and important. First, let us try to understand what a genre is. Genre is a literary category based on specific conventions such as style, mood, length, and organizational features. The genres are also divided into subgenres sometimes. In Western literature, we have three main forms such as poetry, drama, and prose. In poetry, we once again have subgenres like lyrics, epics, and dramatic poetry. By lyric, we mean songs, odes, ballads, elegies, and sonnets. Dramatic poetry can have comical, tragical, melodramatic poems. In the category of drama, we have tragedy and comedy, which can further be classified into comedy of manners, sentimental comedy, satirical comedy, etc. In prose, we have novel, novella, short story, biography, autobiography, etc. So, this is about literary genres. Regarding the periods in English literature, we already know we have the Old English period from 1450 AD to 1066 AD, medieval period from 1066 AD to 1485 AD, Elizabethan period from 1485 to 1625 AD, Augustan age from 1625 to 1700, Romantic period 1800 to 1839, Victorian period 1837 to 1900, and modern period, which is 20th century. The important landmarks of Old English period is that it was a time of epic poetry, and one important epic of that time is Beowulf. There is Bible translations being done during this time, and sermons given by clergies and parsons is also an important form of that period. Medieval period, we have Geoffrey Chaucer, the first English poet. His writings come in this period. It is a time of poetry and romances. An important work by Geoffrey Chaucer is the Canterbury Tales. In Elizabethan period, we have the dominant form of dramas. It is known as the age of drama. We have William Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, Christopher Marlowe, university wits writing during this time. We also have sonneteers like Edmund Spenser, who wrote his sonnets during this period. A Restoration age is the time when Milton started writing his poetry. During this time, many dramas were also written. These are popularly known as comedy of manners. Augustan age is a period of satire, mock heroic epics, and first novels were written during this time, like Richardson's Pamela. We also have Jonathan Swift, Alexander Pope, Daniel Defoe writing during this period. In the Romantic period, there is an increasing interest in nature. It is called the time of nature poetry. We have Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, and Shelley writing during this time. Novelists like Walter Scott, Jane Austen also wrote their works in this time. Then we come to Victorian period, which is mainly considered to be an age of novels. Uh, During this time, poetry and prose, mainly essays, were written during this time. Now, let us look at specific characteristics of Victorian era. Victorian era was a peaceful time for the British populace because it had a long reign of Queen Victoria for 64 years. It is an unique period both in the history of England and history of English literature. It was an era of peace and prosperity. Lot of wealth from third world countries started flowing into England. England had colonies in different parts of the world, and the wealth of those countries were brought to England during this time. It is a time of rapid industrialization and imperial expansion. England started having newer colonies in all parts of the world during this time. It was a period of science and technology, railways, telegraph, electricity, etc. There was expansion of commerce and trade. Overseas trade used to happen between England and many of its colonies. It was it was a time when there was a rise in business and middle class originated during this time. Britain emerged as largest empire during this time. It is golden year in the history of British history. Dramatic change took place during this time, like it was a period of innovations, isn't it? So lot of changes were taking place in the lifestyle of people who lived during this time. During this time, England had almost three-fourths of the world under its control. So, there is a popular saying that sun never set on the British Empire. But along with the prosperity of England, there were also a section of the society who were suffering due to poverty and inhuman living conditions. The worst impact of industrialization and urbanization, overcrowded cities, slums, child labor, poverty, and class division was felt during this time. The women who are the sufferers in any society began to react against this inequality. They asked questions about inequality. They began voicing their thoughts on voting and property rights, and many of them were confined to domestic spaces, like they did not have a chance to go out and work or to earn independently. They were always under the control of male masters. And then during this time, virtue was given more importance, honesty, hard work. People were ready to do that kind of hard work during this time. And the Victorian women were very much conscious of their dressing style. Both men and women were conscious of the manners of social interaction, how they would behave in the public and private space. There used to be a lot of manuals which taught young ladies how to behave in society. And the sensibilities became more and more refined during this time. It was an era of science versus religion. Charles Darwin's book, Theory of Evolution, created doubts in the minds of people who traditionally believed that God created man and the entire universe, whereas in Darwin's theory, he propounded that man is evolved, taking several years, slowly, bit by bit, from ape. So that was a theory presented by Charles Darwin, and it created several problems in the religious fronts. Complexities and conflicts of Victorian age finds better expression in Victorian literature. So all this kind of complexities and the harsh reality of Victorian life is expressed in the literature of that time, whether we take poetry, novels, or drama. The first chapter of the famous novel Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens begins like this. He gives us an overview of life of Victorian period. The novel begins like this. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. Sorry for the interruption. During this time, we have very important writers writing in English, and they are mainly novelists. The first one of them is Charles Dickens, who wrote between 1812 to 1870. His famous works are Oliver Twist, Great Expectations, Nicholas Nickleby, David Copperfield, Hard Times, etc. And Dickens has given a very realistic picture of his time in his novels. That is, he gives a picture of social life, how people lived, what were the conditions in which especially the lower class people lived in those times. So his novels are mainly social novels, and he was the most popular novelist of his time, and even today many of his works are prescribed in universities and colleges. And he had an impact on Victorian society because many of his novels used to come as serials in the magazines, what we call as Daravahi. So his names are, novels are usually come in serialized forms, and people would wait for the next episode, which used to come in the magazine. Bronte Sisters, these are important novelists of Victorian period. They are Emily Bronte, Anne Bronte, and Charlotte Bronte. Emily Bronte wrote only one novel, Wuthering Heights, and Charlotte Bronte's novel is Jane Eyre. These women, Bronte sisters, used unconventional themes such as the desire for freedom, women's choice about marriage and career. So they criticized the society and they propagated the rights of women in their novels. Thomas Hardy, another important Victorian novelist, his main works are Tess, Far from Madding Crowd, Jude the Obscure, Return of the Native. All of these are Hardy's important novels. Hardy also questioned social conventions. He wrote about the issues of class and gender, and he is considered as a pessimist novelist mainly because his novels end in tragedy. Other versatile novelists are George Eliot. She wrote psychological, realistic novels. Arthur Conan Doyle's detective fiction is most famous. Elizabeth Gaskell wrote about industrial and gothic fiction. H.G. Wells, he experimented in the genre of scientific fiction. Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland is most famous. During this Victorian time, we also have two great prominent poets. They are Alfred Tennyson and Robert Browning. Alfred Tennyson's poems have the dominant themes of despair and hope. Robert Browning, we all know, wrote dramatic monologues. Victorian dramatists, George Bernard Shaw, Oscar Wilde, these are Victorian dramatists. They satired on social pretensions and hypocrisy of this time. Victorian Age was an era of pessimism and optimism, despair and hope, conflicts and complexities. So it is an era of contradictions. Thank you.